You are not your hunger. I want to tell you something about the 170 pounds I released over 9 years ago. I no longer have an abject fear of gaining it back. I want to sit with that sentence for a moment because I know how radical it sounds in a world that treats weight management like a lifelong white knuckle grip. Like you were always one bad day away from becoming who you used to be. Like the only thing standing between you and the abyss is constant vigilance, iron discipline, and an identity built entirely around your most difficult relationship. That is not where I live anymore. And the reason why has everything to do with what once an addict, always an addict, gets wrong. What the phrase gets wrong. I understand the intention behind once an addict, always an addict. It's meant to cultivate humility, to prevent the kind of overconfidence that leads people to believe they can casually reintroduce a substance that has cost them everything. But here's what it misses entirely: the neurological, emotional, psychological, and social reasons we turn to substances in the first place. When we understand those reasons, really understand them, at the level of reward chemistry and nervous system regulation and gut biology and habit formation, the idea of a permanent, fixed, immutable addict identity starts to collapse under its own weight. Because what we know now is this: addictive patterns develop for intelligent reasons. They are responses to real circumstances. They are the nervous system doing exactly what a nervous system does when it is under-resourced, under-accompanied, and doing the best it can with what it has. That is not a life sentence. That is a starting point for understanding. Respect is not fear. I know exactly how my body responds to ultra-processed substances. I call them not food because that's what they are, not food. And I have a deep, healthy respect for that knowledge. Respect is not the same as fear. Fear keeps you in a crouch. It keeps your identity tethered to a past version of yourself, perpetually braced for the moment she comes back. Fear says, I am always one bite away from losing everything. Respect says something different. Respect says, I know what substances do in my body. I know they function more like a poison to my particular system than like food. And so they simply don't enter my world, the same way I wouldn't casually ingest something I know my body couldn't tolerate. Not because I'm terrified of it, because I know myself. That distinction between fear and respect is where genuine recovery lives. The biology underneath the behavior. Here is what the always an addict framework doesn't account for. The biology changes. Not because willpower kicks in, not because you finally found the right discipline, because when you release the substances that were dysregulating your reward chemistry, when you find other ways to soothe and nurture your nervous system, when you build new neural pathways through consistent practice over time, your brain actually rewires. The old pathways don't disappear entirely. I want to be honest about that. I may always have some pull toward the substances I used for decades to regulate my emotions, my stress, my loneliness, my overwhelm. The neurological memory of what they did for me doesn't simply vanish. But here's what has changed. I no longer have the habits, the chemical and biological makeup, or the neurological pathways necessary for those substances to hijack my choices. That is a different thing entirely. The pull, if it ever arises, is not backed by a body in chronic dysregulation, desperately searching for relief. It is not backed by a gut microbiome that has been shaped by years of ultra-processed input. It is not backed by reward receptors so depleted they can only feel satisfied by a dopamine flood. It is not backed by habit loops so deeply grooved they fire before I've made a conscious decision. Those are the conditions that make addictive behavior truly difficult to resist, and those conditions, with time and real work, can change. The work that actually matters. What I have spent years building is not an impenetrable wall between me and certain foods. It is something far more durable, a genuinely different relationship with soothing, comfort, nourishment, and regulation. Because that is the real question underneath all of it. Not how do I resist the thing, but what need was the thing meeting? And how do I meet it differently? The nervous system that used to reach for ultra-processed substances in moments of stress, loneliness, overwhelm, or celebration, that nervous system now has other options, real options. Options that actually work, that don't have me depleted and ashamed and starting over on Monday. That is not white knuckling. That is not vigilance. That is a different life built from the inside out. What this means for identity. Your brain is wired to act in alignment with who it believes you are. This is established neuroscience, not self-help philosophy. When you carry "I am an addict" as a permanent identity, you hand your brain a blueprint. And your brain, loyal and efficient as it is, will do its best to honor it. But what if the more accurate sentence is, I am someone who developed addictive patterns in response to real circumstances and who has done the neurological and emotional work to create a genuinely different relationship with those substances. That's not denial. That's not naivete. That is what recovery that goes all the way down actually looks like. Not, I am always one step away from who I used to be. But I understand why I did what I did. I have healthy respect for what those substances do in my body, and I have built a life where they genuinely don't fit. That is a very different place to live from. If this resonated with you, the Advanced Recovery Project was built for exactly this work. It's not a diet program. It's not a willpower challenge. It's a community of people doing the deeper neurological and emotional work, reading the book together on Saturday deep dives, meeting in small groups, and building the kind of understanding that actually sticks. Because these patterns developed in relationship, and they heal in relationship. You don't have to figure this out alone.